At my daughter's funeral, my daughter-in-law whispered, "Now this house will finally be mine." I didn't say a word, but what happened before the burial changed everything. The weight of those words settled over me like a cold shroud. I stood there, frozen, as Susan's perfume lingered in the air between us. My ears rang with the echo of her voice, casual and certain, as if she were discussing a grocery list rather than the home I had built with my husband over 40 years. I kept my eyes fixed on Catherine's casket. The polished mahogany gleamed. Under the funeral home lights, adorned with white lilies, her favorite, my little girl, my only daughter, gone at just 42 from cancer. And here was Susan, my son Thomas's wife of 15 years, already laying claim to my home while Catherine wasn't even in the ground. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to see Thomas, his eyes red-rimmed. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. "Mom, are you okay? You look pale." Managed a nod. "I'm just tired, dear," I said, patting his hand. At 64, I had buried my husband Harold just 18 months ago, and now my daughter. Tired didn't begin to cover it. Thomas gave me a squeeze before moving to greet more mourners. I watched him go, wondering when my son had become such a stranger to me. He'd always been a good boy. But since marrying Susan, something had changed. Little by little, his opinions suddenly mirrored hers, his voice adopting her sharp edges. Susan stood across the room now, accepting condolences with practiced grace. At 47, she was striking, tall and angular with perfectly highlighted blonde hair. People were drawn to her confidence. I had been too at first. "She's just what Thomas needs," Harold had said years ago. Someone with a bit of fire. But fire can warm a home or burn it to the ground. The funeral director approached, indicating it was time to leave for the cemetery. I nodded, gathering my purse and the small framed photo of Catherine I had brought. Her at 25, laughing on the beach during our last family vacation before Harold got sick. Catherine had been my rock through Harold's illness and after his death. While Thomas and Susan visited on holidays, Catherine came every weekend, sometimes just to sit with me in comfortable silence as we worked on our respective projects, me knitting, her sketching. "We're the quiet ones, Mom," she would say. "We don't need to fill every space with words." Oh, how I needed her quiet strength now. The cemetery was bathed in autumn sunlight, the old oak trees aflame with red and gold. As we gathered around the gravesite, I found myself standing between Thomas and Susan. The minister spoke words about eternal peace, but I barely heard them. Susan's whisper had lodged in my brain like a splinter. Now this house will finally be mine. My Victorian home on Maple Street had been in Harold's family for 3 generations. We had raised our children there, celebrated birthdays and Christmases, weathered storms both literal and figurative. Every corner held memories. Catherine, taking her first steps, Thomas building model airplanes, Harold reading by the fireplace. It wasn't just a house. It was the physical manifestation of our family's history, and Susan wanted it. I glanced at her as she dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue. She had never liked Catherine. My daughter was too perceptive. "Be careful around Susan, Mom," Catherine had warned me shortly after her diagnosis. She's always had her eye on this house. I had dismissed her concerns then. But standing here now, with Catherine's coffin being lowered into the ground, I wasn't so sure anymore. The service concluded, and people began drifting back to their cars. Many were heading to my house, where Susan had insisted on hosting the reception. "You shouldn't have to worry about anything, Eleanor," she had said with that smile that never quite reached her eyes. Back at the house, I stood in my kitchen, or what had been my kitchen before Susan took over. She had rearranged everything, from the placement of the coffee maker to the organization of the pantry. "Can I get you anything, Mom?" Thomas asked, appearing beside me. "No, thank you," I said. "I think I just need a moment alone." I slipped upstairs, to Catherine's old bedroom. Susan had been pushing to turn it into a home office, but I had resisted. The room remained untouched. The watercolors on the walls, the bookshelf filled with her favorite novels, the old quilt her grandmother had made. I sat on the edge of the bed when a soft knock at the door startled me. I looked up to see Patricia, Catherine's best friend since college. "Eleanor," she said softly. "May I come in?" I nodded, and she crossed the room to sit beside me. "Catherine asked me to give you this," Patricia said, reaching into her bag and pulling out a sealed envelope. She made me promise to wait until after the funeral. My hands trembled as I took it. Inside was a letter and a small key I didn't recognize. Dear Mom, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. I wish I could spare you this pain, but there are things you need to know. Susan is planning to take the house from you. I overheard her talking to Thomas about convincing you to move to a retirement community. She's been talking to realtors behind. You're back, getting estimates on the house's value. I've been gathering evidence of her plans. You'll find everything in the safe deposit box this key opens. The details are on the back of this letter. Don't let her push you out, Mom. This is your home, and you deserve to live in it for as long as you want. I know you think I'm being paranoid, but trust me on this. Watch out for sudden concerns about your health or ability to maintain the house. These will be the first signs I love you more than words can say. Stay strong. You've always been stronger than you think. All my love, Catherine. I read the letter twice, my hands shaking harder the second time. Catherine had known. She had tried to warn me, and I hadn't listened. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my pocket along with the key. Downstairs, I could hear Susan's laugh. Too loud, too performative. Are you all right? Patricia asked, watching me with concern. I will be, I said with new resolve. As I made my way back downstairs, I saw Susan in the hallway, speaking with a woman I didn't recognize. They were looking at the built-in bookshelves, and I heard Susan say, "We'll definitely be renovating this entire area." She stopped abruptly when she saw me, her practiced smile sliding quickly into place. "Eleanor." "There you are," she said, coming toward me with arms outstretched. "Everyone's been asking for you." I looked into her eyes, calculating, cold, and for the first time since Harold died, I felt something other than grief. I felt anger, and with that anger came clarity. The house would not be Susan's, not now, not ever. The morning after the funeral dawned gray and drizzly. I made coffee in the kitchen, running my hand along the counter Catherine had helped me pick out during our last renovation. This house at 247 Maple Street had stood for over a century. Harold's grandfather had purchased it in 1923, passing from father to son until Harold. "This house has good bones," Harold used to say, "built to last generations." Every corner held memories, every room told a story. The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. "Mom, it's Thomas. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I said, staring at the rain-soaked garden. "It's quiet here. That's why I'm calling. Susan and I were talking. Maybe you shouldn't be alone. We thought I could come over to help sort through Catherine's things." I tensed. "I'm not ready for that yet, Thomas." "Mom, it might help with closure. Besides, Susan mentioned the guest room is getting cluttered and Catherine's room is not cluttered," I said firmly. "And I'll decide when to go through her things." An awkward silence followed. Then Thomas cleared his throat. "Have you ever thought about downsizing? There's a nice retirement community near us, just as Catherine had predicted. Thomas, I've lived here for 40 years. This is my home." "I know, Mom, but the maintenance alone, I'm perfectly capable of maintaining my home. Susan's coming over later with some casseroles. She wants to check on you." I closed my eyes. That's thoughtful of her. After hanging up, I read Catherine's letter again, then checked the information about the safe deposit box. It was at First National Bank downtown. I drove through the rain to the bank, where a manager helped me access the box. Inside was a folder, labeled for Mom in Catherine's handwriting. Back in my car, I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were printouts of emails between Susan and a real estate agent discussing my house's value, dated after Catherine's diagnosis. Photos of Susan showing a man around my property. A recorded conversation on a USB drive. And most disturbing, a draft power of attorney document giving Thomas control over my finances, with Susan's annotations in the margins. My hands shook with rage. How long had this been happening? When I arrived home, Susan's SUV was already parked in the driveway. I tucked the folder into my purse and went inside. Susan was in my kitchen rearranging my cabinets. 3 casserole dishes sat on the counter. "Eleanor, I was wondering where you'd gone." Her smile was bright, but her eyes were assessing. "Just some errands," I said. "Thank you for the food. I've organized your spice rack. It makes more sense alphabetically, don't you think?" This was my kitchen, where I had cooked thousands of meals, where Catherine had learned to bake cookies standing on a stool beside me. "I think you'll find things much more efficient now," Susan continued. "Actually, I was thinking the whole kitchen could use an update. Those cabinets are so dated." The kitchen is fine, Susan. Well, it's functional but hardly modern. Thomas and I were discussing Were you also discussing the real estate value of my home? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Susan's smile faltered. What do you mean? I think you know exactly what I mean. Her expression smoothed, back into concerned daughter-in-law. Eleanor, grief can make us imagine things that aren't there. The condescension made my blood boil. I'm grieving, not senile. Susan sighed. No one said anything about senility, though Thomas has mentioned you've seemed a bit confused lately. The first attempt to question my mental competence, just as Catherine had warned. I'm quite clear-headed, I said, moving to put the spices back where I wanted them. Clear-headed enough to know when someone is trying to manipulate me. Susan laughed. I'm just trying to help. The stairs alone are a hazard at your age. I'm 64, not 90, I said. And this is my home. I have no intention of leaving. Something cold flickered in her eyes. Of course not. No one's suggesting that yet. Thomas entered the kitchen. There you are. I was just organizing your mother's kitchen a bit. Thomas kissed my cheek. How are you doing, Mom? I'm managing. But I'd prefer if people would stop rearranging my things without asking. Thomas frowned. Susan's just trying to help. I understand that, but this is still my house. Of course it is, Susan said soothingly. She exchanged a look with Thomas that made my skin crawl. We just want what's best for you, Mom, Thomas added. I thought of the documents in my purse. What's best for me or what's best for you? I appreciate the concern, I said, but I'm perfectly capable of deciding what's best for myself. Susan brightened, artificially. Well, I should get going. Book club tonight. The casseroles just need to be heated at 3:50. After she left, Thomas lingered. Mom, you seem different. I just buried my daughter yesterday, Thomas. How should I seem? He looked embarrassed. That's not what I meant. You've never been short with Susan before. Grief changes people. So does learning the truth about them. What's that supposed to mean? I almost told him everything. About the letter, the safe deposit box, the evidence. But something held me back. It means I'm tired, I said instead. And I'd like to rest now. After Thomas left, I sat in Harold's armchair, the folder open in my lap. My home felt like contested territory, and I was outmatched, but not defeated, not by a long shot. Over the next week, Susan's visits became more frequent. Each time she arrived with food I didn't ask for, reorganized something I hadn't complained about or suggested improvements to my outdated home. With each visit, my suspicion grew. I hadn't confronted Thomas with the evidence yet. I needed to understand exactly what I was up against before showing my hand. So I watched and waited, cataloging every comment, every suggestion that hinted at their plans. The second floor must be such a hassle to clean, Susan remarked one afternoon, running her finger along a perfectly clean bookshelf. And these old houses are so inefficient to heat. I just nodded, pretending not to notice as she examined the crown molding with a critical eye. This place would fetch a small fortune with the right updates, she continued. Location alone would attract young professionals looking for historic charm. I'm not interested in selling, I replied mildly, watching her face. A flash of irritation crossed her features before she composed herself. Of course not right now, but eventually you'll want something more manageable. That evening after she left, I discovered she had left real estate listings for senior communities on my kitchen counter. They had been casually placed under a cookbook, as if accidentally forgotten. Thomas called the next day. Mom, Susan mentioned you seemed tired yesterday. Are you sleeping okay? I'm fine, Thomas. It's just, grief can manifest physically. And at your age, it's important to monitor any changes. At my age, I repeated flatly. An uncomfortable pause followed. Susan and I were thinking, maybe you should have a checkup, just to be safe. First question my ability to maintain the house, then question my health. Catherine had warned me exactly how this would unfold. I had my annual physical 2 months ago, I said. I'm perfectly healthy. Still, maybe I should come with you next time. Sometimes doctors explain things in ways that can be confusing. I gripped the phone tighter. I understand my doctor just fine, Thomas. That night, I sat in Catherine's room, leafing through her old journals. I'd started reading them after finding the safe deposit box, hoping to understand how long she had suspected Susan's plans. In an entry from 3 years ago, I found my answer. Mom doesn't see it, but Susan's been exploring the house like it's already hers, taking measurements in the living room, asking pointed questions about the plumbing. Today, she asked Mom if she'd ever consider modernizing the place. The look on her face when Mom said she loved it just as it is, I could have framed it. This house is their endgame. They've been planning this for years. My sweet, observant Catherine. How blind I had been. 3. Next morning, I called Patricia, Catherine's best friend. We met at a cafe downtown, away from prying eyes. I need to ask you something, I said after we'd ordered coffee. How much did Catherine tell you about Susan? Patricia's expression turned serious. Everything, I think. She was worried about you. She was right to be. I leaned forward. They're trying to get me out of my house. Patricia nodded grimly. Catherine suspected as much. She said Susan's had her eye on your place since day one. Did she tell you why she was collecting evidence? She wanted you to be prepared, Patricia said, placing her hand over mine. She knew you wouldn't believe it unless you saw proof. Susan's very convincing. That she is. I took a deep breath. Catherine always saw through her, though. A sad smile crossed Patricia's face. Catherine was a good judge of character. Susan resented her for it. I thought of all the times Susan had subtly undermined Catherine, the thinly veiled competition, the dismissive comments about her art. I had chalked it up to typical family tensions, but it had been deeper than that. I need your help, I said, quietly. If anything happens to me, Eleanor, don't talk like that. No, listen. If they escalate, if they try to question my competence or force me into a care facility, I need someone who knows the truth. I slid a copy of Catherine's letter across the table. Keep this somewhere safe. Patricia read it, her face growing pale. My God, they're actually plotting against you. She looked up. What can I do? Just be my witness. And if things get worse, help me find a good lawyer. When I returned home, Susan's car was in my driveway again. I hadn't given her a key, but somehow she had one. I found her in the dining room measuring the windows. These would look gorgeous with custom drapery, she said, not even bothering to explain her presence in my home. The light in here is just lovely. Why are you measuring my windows, Susan? She didn't miss a beat. Just thinking about a Christmas gift. You mentioned once how drafty these old windows get. I never said any such thing. I appreciate the thought, but I don't need new drapes. Oh, it's no trouble. This room has such potential. The room is fine as it is, I said firmly. She turned, a calculating look in her eyes. Eleanor, are you feeling all right? You seem irritable lately. There it was again. The subtle suggestion that something was wrong with me, not with her. Boundary-crossing behavior. I'm not irritable, Susan. I just don't understand why you're in my house when I didn't invite you. Thomas asked me to check on you. She tilted her head. He's worried, you know. He says you've been forgetful. Forgetful? I repeated, genuinely confused. She nodded, her face a mask of concern. He said you missed your medication yesterday. I don't take daily medication. The lie was so blatant it took my breath away. I think you're confused, Susan, she smiled sympathetically. It's okay, Eleanor. It happens to everyone as they age. No need to be embarrassed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Their plan was accelerating, fabricating memory issues, unauthorized access to my home, discussions about my health behind my back. I needed to act. Soon. I was making tea the next morning when a wave of dizziness hit me. Strange. I'd felt fine when I woke up. By afternoon, my stomach was cramping painfully. I barely made it to the bathroom before violently throwing up. As I rinsed my mouth, a horrible thought struck me. The tea. Susan had brought it last week, a special blend to help with sleep. I had made it this morning without thinking. With shaking hands, I called Patricia. I think I've been poisoned, I whispered. Patricia arrived within 20 minutes, her face tight with worry. She insisted on taking me to the emergency room, where the doctor diagnosed me with severe food poisoning. When he asked what I'd eaten, I mentioned the tea. Bring the tea leaves if you can, the doctor advised. It could help us determine the exact cause. Patricia stayed with me through the night as they administered fluids. When Thomas arrived the next morning, his concern seemed genuine, but I couldn't trust my own judgment anymore. Mom, why didn't you call me? He asked, taking the chair beside my bed. It all happened so quickly, I said weakly. He frowned at Patricia. You should have called me immediately. Eleanor asked me not to worry you, Patricia replied calmly. Besides, I had everything under control. Thomas's jaw tightened. Well, I'm here now. I'll take over. That's not necessary, I said. Patricia has been a tremendous help. After the doctor discharged me, Thomas insisted I stay at his and Susan's house. Just for a few days, Mom. You shouldn't be alone right now. I appreciate the offer, but I'd rather go home. Mom, be reasonable. You can barely stand. Then Patricia can stay with me, I countered, meeting his gaze. His expression darkened. Why are you being so difficult? Susan's already prepared the guest room. I felt a chill run through me. If I went to their house in this condition, how easy would it be for them to declare me incompetent? To say my confusion had worsened? I'm going home, Thomas. That's final. The ride home was tense. At my house, Patricia helped me inside while Thomas carried my overnight bag, his disapproval evident in every movement. I still think this is a mistake, he said, setting the bag down with more force than necessary. I'll be fine, I assured him. Patricia will stay tonight, and I'll call if I need anything. After he left, Patricia locked the door behind him. I collected the tea, she said, showing me a Ziploc bag. And I took photos of everything in your kitchen, just in case. Thank you, I said, sinking into Harold's chair. I need to show you something. I directed her to the hidden key to my study where I'd stored the evidence from the safe deposit box. Patricia examined each document, her expression growing more troubled. Eleanor, this is serious. They're not just trying to get your house. They're trying to take over your life. I know. I rubbed my temples. I need to speak with a lawyer, but I don't know who to trust. Our family attorney is Thomas's golf buddy. My divorce lawyer, Patricia said firmly. Margaret Chen. She's a shark in a silk blouse. The next day, while Patricia stayed with me, I called Attorney Chen's office and secured an appointment for the following week. I also called a locksmith to change my locks and a security company to install a basic alarm system. Thomas called, sounding irritated. Mom, Susan just tried to drop off some soup, but your locks have been changed? Yes, I said simply. I'm taking some security precautions. What? Why? Recent break-ins in the neighborhood. I lied smoothly. The police recommended it. You should have told me. We could have helped. It's taken care of. A pause. Mom, Susan and I are worried about you. These sudden decisions, the paranoia about security, it's not like you. I'm not paranoid, Thomas. I'm being prudent. When I hung up, Patricia looked worried. They'll escalate now. She was right. The next morning, Thomas arrived with Susan and a man he introduced as Dr. Phillips. A friend who specializes in geriatric medicine, Thomas explained. Just for a casual assessment, I stood in my doorway blocking their entrance. I don't recall scheduling an appointment. It's just a friendly visit, Susan said with that artificial smile. Dr. Phillips was kind enough to make a house call. I don't need a house call, I said firmly. I have my own doctor. Dr. Phillips cleared his throat. Mrs. Sinclair, your son is concerned about some recent behavioral changes. Confusion, paranoia, impulsive decisions. I'm not confused or paranoid, I interrupted, and I don't appreciate being ambushed at my own home. Mom, Thomas said in the same tone he'd used when Catherine was being difficult. This attitude is exactly what we're worried about. I looked at my son, my only remaining child, and felt a profound sadness. How had we come to this? Was the house really worth destroying our relationship? But then I caught Susan's expression. This wasn't about concern for me, this was about getting what they wanted. Thomas, I love you, I said quietly, but I'm not having a medical examination I didn't consent to. Please respect that. Mrs. Sinclair, Dr. Phillips tried again. Perhaps if we just chat informally. No. My voice was firm. I'm asking all of you to leave now. Susan's mask slipped. This is ridiculous. We're trying to help you. Are you? I met her gaze coolly. Or are you trying to have me declared incompetent so you can take my house? Thomas's face paled. Mom, what are you talking about? Dr. Phillips looked uncomfortable. Perhaps I should come back another time. After they left, I called Attorney Chen and moved our appointment up. 2 days later, I sat in her sleek downtown office, explaining everything while she took meticulous notes. They're following a classic playbook, she said when I finished. Isolate, invalidate, incapacitate. She tapped her pen against her notepad. But they've made mistakes. Sloppy ones. What should I do? First, we establish legal protections. A new will, healthcare directives, power of attorney, all naming someone other than Thomas. She raised an eyebrow. Someone you trust implicitly. Patricia, I said without hesitation. Good. Next, we document everything. Every visit, every comment, every unauthorized entry to your home. We'll need the tea analyzed too. And the house? I asked. We'll make it ironclad. They won't get a brick of it unless you explicitly choose to give it to them. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. One more thing, Attorney Chen added. Stop playing defense. It's time to show them who they're really dealing with. I left her office with a plan and a newfound determination. Susan and Thomas thought I was a helpless old woman, easy to manipulate and push aside. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Attorney Chen moved with remarkable efficiency. Within a week, I had a new will, advanced healthcare directives, and durable power of attorney documents, all naming Patricia as my representative. The tea leaves tested positive for high concentrations of laxatives and an antihistamine known to cause drowsiness, not enough to be deadly, but certainly enough to make me appear confused and ill. While I was establishing these protections, Thomas and Susan escalated their campaign. Susan began telling mutual friends I was declining rapidly. Thomas called my doctor expressing concerns about my paranoid behavior. They sent a home health aide to my door unannounced, claiming my insurance had approved it. A complete fabrication. Documented everything meticulously, just as Attorney Chen advised. Each incident, each lie, each boundary crossed. The evidence built steadily, painting a picture of systematic manipulation. Then came the certified letter from an attorney representing Thomas requesting a competency evaluation. It cited erratic behavior, unfounded accusations against family members, and inability to maintain self-care, all blatant lies. I called Attorney Chen immediately. They're getting desperate, she observed after I read her the letter. This is actually good news. How is this possibly good news? Because they're overreaching. We can use this. She paused. Are you ready to confront them? I thought of Catherine's letter, of all the evidence I'd gathered, of the house that held my family's history. Yes, I'm ready. Then let's set the stage. I suggest a family meeting on your terms, on your territory. I sent Thomas a text. We need to talk. Family meeting at my house Saturday at 2 p.m. Important decisions to be made about the future. He responded almost immediately. Good. I'm glad you're finally being reasonable. His assumption that important decisions meant I was surrendering to their plan spoke volumes. I spent the days before the meeting preparing. Attorney Chen helped me organize the evidence chronologically. Patricia arranged to have a respected geriatric psychiatrist, Dr. Levinson, perform an independent competency evaluation, the results of which were now sealed in an envelope on my desk on Saturday morning. Patricia arrived early to help set up. We arranged the dining room table with folders neatly labeled, medical records, property documents, financial statements, and evidence. Are you nervous? Patricia asked as we placed waters at each seat. Strangely, no. And it was true. The anxiety that had plagued me for weeks had been replaced by a steady resolve. I just want this to be over. Thomas and Susan arrived exactly at 2, both dressed as if for a business meeting. Susan carried her designer planner, no doubt filled with assisted living brochures and real estate contacts. Mom, Thomas greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. You're looking better. I'm feeling quite well, I replied, leading them to the dining room. Susan's eyes immediately went to the folders on the table, a flash of uncertainty crossing her face. This wasn't the setup she had expected. Please, sit down, I said, taking my place at the head of the table. Patricia sat to my right, leaving Thomas and Susan to take the chairs opposite. I didn't realize Patricia would be joining us, Susan said, her voice tight. I asked her to be here, I said simply. Now, I believe we have some important matters to discuss. Thomas leaned forward, all business. We do. Mom, we've been concerned about your health and well-being. I raised my hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Actually, Thomas, I'll be leading this discussion. He blinked, taken aback. I opened the first folder. I want to start by addressing the letter from your attorney requesting a competency evaluation. Susan shifted in her seat. Eleanor, that's just a formality. We're worried about— I've already had an evaluation, I interrupted, sliding Dr. Levinson's sealed report across the table. Dr. Alan Levinson, Chief of Geriatric Psychiatry at Memorial Hospital. His findings are quite clear. I am fully competent, with no signs of cognitive impairment, dementia, or mental illness. Thomas stared at the envelope, but didn't touch it. Furthermore, I continued, opening another folder, I have here the results of the analysis of the special tea Susan brought me. Would you like to explain why it contained high doses of laxatives and diphenhydramine? Susan's face drained of color. That's ridiculous. It was just herbal tea. We have the lab results, Patricia said quietly, and I have photos of the original packaging. I turned to Thomas, whose expression had shifted from confidence to confusion. Son, I need to ask you something. Did you know about the tea? He looked at Susan, then back at me. What are you talking about? What tea? The tea that gave me food poisoning, I said. The incident you used to suggest I couldn't care for myself. Susan said you had eaten some expired food? He stammered. I nodded slowly, watching his face. There was still a chance he was innocent in all this, manipulated by Susan just as I had been. Thomas, I said gently, I have evidence that Susan has been planning to take my house for years. Evidence that she's been fabricating concerns about my health to push me out. That's absurd, Susan snapped. Thomas, don't listen to this. Can't you see she's confused? I opened Catherine's folder and removed the emails between Susan and the real estate agent. These are dated 3 years ago, I said, sliding them across the table. And here are photos of Susan showing a realtor around my property when I was at the hospital with Catherine. Thomas picked up the papers with a shaking hand. This can't be right. There's more, I said. Documentation of every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to undermine me. Eleanor is twisting everything, Susan insisted, her voice rising. Thomas, remember how paranoid she's been acting? This is just more of that. But Thomas was reading the emails, his face growing paler with each line. You told this agent the J house would be available once the old lady is moved to a care facility. He read aloud. He looked up at Susan. When was this? It's fake. Susan grabbed for the papers, but Thomas held them away from her. It's her handwriting, Susan. Her email address. I watched my son carefully, hoping to see a glimmer of the man he had been before Susan. There's one more thing you should know, I said quietly. Catherine knew. She discovered Susan's plans and was gathering evidence before she died. Catherine? Thomas whispered. I handed him the letter from the safe deposit box. He read it slowly, his hands trembling more with each line. She tried to warn me, I said. I didn't listen until it was too late. Thomas looked up, his eyes filled with tears. Mom, I swear I didn't know, Susan scoffed. This is absurd. You're going to believe some paranoid accusations from a dying woman? The room went silent. The cruelty of her words hung in the air like poison. Thomas turned to look at his wife, seeing her, truly seeing her, perhaps for the first time. That dying woman, he said slowly, was my sister. Susan's mask finally shattered. Oh, please. Catherine always had it out for me. She was jealous of our life, our success. Enough! Thomas slammed his palm on the table, making the water glasses jump. Don't you dare speak about her that way. I watched my son transform before my eyes. The scales that had covered them for so long were falling away, and the pain of seeing clearly for the first time was evident on his face. All this time, he said, his voice hollow. The suggestions about Mom's health, the concerns about the house, you were just setting up your plan. Susan's strategy shifted instantly. Tears filled her eyes. How can you believe this? I was trying to help. Your mother is getting older. The house is too much for her. The tea, Susan, Thomas interrupted. Did you put something in her tea? Susan's silence was damning. Thomas pushed back from the table, running his hands through his hair. My God, my own sister knew, and I didn't listen. Thomas, I said softly, I don't believe you knew what Susan was doing, but you did let her influence you against me. He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. I'm so sorry, Mom. I felt no triumph in his pain, only sadness for what our family had become. I know. Susan's face hardened as she realized her performance wasn't working. This is ridiculous. I don't have to sit here and be accused like this. She stood gathering her planner. Thomas, we're leaving. But Thomas didn't move. I'm staying, Susan. What? I said I'm staying. My mother and I need to talk, alone. Susan stared at him in disbelief, then at me, her eyes filled with cold fury. This isn't over, Eleanor. She stormed out, the front door slamming behind her. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Patricia quietly excused herself to the kitchen, giving us privacy. I've been a fool, Thomas finally said, his voice breaking. Catherine tried to tell me, but I didn't want to see it. We believe what we want to believe, I said gently. Susan is very convincing. That's no excuse. He looked up at me, his eyes red. I failed you. I failed Catherine. I reached across the table and took his hand. You're here now. That's what matters. Thomas stayed until evening, looking through the evidence I'd gathered, asking questions, piecing together the extent of Susan's manipulations. We talked about Catherine, about the months of her illness that he had been too busy to fully participate in, about the void her absence had left in our lives. As darkness fell, Thomas stood to leave. I need some time to figure things out, he said. With Susan, with everything. I nodded, understanding. Take the time you need. The house. He hesitated. I want you to know I never wanted to take it from you. Not really. I believe you, I said. And I did. My son had been manipulated just as I had been, perhaps more effectively because of his love for Susan. After he left, Patricia returned from the kitchen where she had been giving us space. You did it, she said, squeezing my shoulder. We did. It. I corrected her. I couldn't have faced them without your support. 3 days passed with no word from Thomas. Then, on the 4th day, he arrived at my door with 2 suitcases and red-rimmed eyes. I've left her, he said simply. I opened. My arms and my son, my grown son, who had become a stranger to me, fell into them like a child. I held him as he cried, the way I had when he was small and the world had been unkind. Over the following weeks, Thomas stayed in Catherine's old room. We talked more honestly than we had in years. He filed for divorce, and Susan fought viciously, dragging his name through their social circle, claiming he had abandoned her for a senile old woman. But the evidence of her machinations was too substantial to deny, and Thomas stood firm. One evening, as we sat in the garden Catherine had once tended, Thomas asked, "What happens with the house now?" "What do you mean?" "Will you leave it to me after everything?" I studied my son's face. "Do you want it?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I used to, because Susan wanted it so badly. Now." He gestured to the climbing roses Catherine had planted. "Now I just want you to be happy here for as long as possible." I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my heart. The house will stay in the family, Thomas. It was always meant to be passed down. But I'm not going anywhere for a long time. As autumn turned to winter, we established a new normal. Thomas found an apartment nearby but visited regularly. We began a tradition of Sunday dinners with Patricia and a few of Catherine's other close friends who had become my support system. The house that Susan had coveted became filled with laughter again. On the anniversary of Catherine's death, I finally went through her art supplies in the sunroom. Among the brushes and canvases, I found a small box with my name on it. Inside was a half-finished painting of our house in springtime, the garden in full bloom. On the back, she had written, "Home is where we keep our memories safe. No one can take that from you, Mom." I hung the unfinished painting in the entryway, a reminder of the daughter who had protected me even after she was gone. In time, Thomas healed and found purpose again. He started a foundation in Catherine's, named to support cancer patients and their families. I converted part of the house into a small gallery to showcase Catherine's artwork, with proceeds going to the foundation. Susan eventually remarried, a wealthy widower with a mansion twice, the size of my humble Victorian. I felt no bitterness when I heard the news, only relief that she had found someone else's life to covet. On my 70th birthday, surrounded by friends old and new, I looked around my beloved home and felt a deep sense of peace. The house that had almost torn my family apart had become a place of healing and new beginnings. The walls that had witnessed so much pain now echoed with the sounds of celebration. To Eleanor, Patricia toasted, raising her glass, who taught us all that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Later, as the party wound down, Thomas found me in the kitchen. "I have something for you," he said, handing me a small wrapped package. Inside was a new set of keys. "I had the locks changed again," he explained, "just to be safe. And I've set up a security system that Patricia and I can monitor remotely." I smiled at my son, at the man he had become. "Thank you, Thomas." "No," he said, taking my hand. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I nearly gave up on you." That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in Harold's chair by the fireplace, feeling the presence of all those I had loved. Harold, Catherine, And yes, even the Thomas I had lost for a while, but found again. We did it, I whispered to Catherine's memory. We kept our home safe. And in the quiet of the house that had seen generations of my family come and go, I knew that some battles are worth fighting, not just for the victory, but for the truth that lies at their heart.